to share something with you. That might put me in a very negative light, yeah.
Relationships are not my forte.
See if someone grabbed up my wife or something completely different ballgame.
I'll walk away from here, and this has been like a therapy session.
This is Umar Ahmed for IFL TV, proudly sponsored by Everlast. We're at the launch press conference for Anthony Joshua v Jermaine Franklin, April 1st at the O2, live on DAZN. Happy to have Joshua off pay-per-view. A bit weird hearing that in this country.
Well, I'm glad to have Joshua on DAZN, first of all. Obviously, our first fight with AJ in the UK, someone we've worked with internationally since 2018, always with an eye on getting him in the UK. And we're delighted to have him on the UK finally. So that's the first thing. And yeah, obviously keeping him on the subscription offer and not on pay-per-view is a sort of additional bonus that we were very keen to launch with, and we've managed to do it. So yeah, excited about that too.
Of course, the opponent is Jermaine Franklin. There's been a lot of talk in boxing about who the opponent should have been. Anthony Joshua's come back as the broadcaster. Of course, you're satisfied with it because you're putting it on. But yeah, your thoughts on Jermaine Franklin as the opponent?
Well, I think there was a list of people that were sort of appropriate AJ opponents. Clearly, he's on a journey back to where he wants to get back to, where we think he belongs, which is heavyweight world champion. There was a list of people who made sense for this fight, sort of a comeback fight. And Franklin was on that list. I think he went up that list after his performance against Dillian White at the end of last year. So we are very happy with him as the opponent. We think it makes sense. And I think my sort of reading of boxing fan feedback and media feedback is that most people agree with that. So yeah, we're excited. I think AJ is an appropriate test for the stage of career he's at.
With that announcement of Joshua came the rest of the DAZN schedule. Was that always the idea that you wanted to put the announcement out at once? Because there were rumours of certain fights that Eddie had talked about, and we could sort of guess the dates and venues and the people who would be headlining those cards. But yeah, just talk to me about the idea of announcing it all at once.
Well, a couple of things. One, it's quite hard for Eddie to keep a secret, so we always try and get things out and when we can before he gives the game away. But jokes aside, I think we've seen success with announcing blocks of events. We want to obviously communicate the value of being a DAZN subscriber. We believe that is best done when fans know what's coming up. It's hard in boxing, unlike in other sports, to know what you're focused on 6 months ahead of time. Obviously, if you're broadcasting football, you're broadcasting rugby, you're broadcasting cricket, you know what you're broadcasting 12 months, 18 months ahead of time. We don't have that luxury in boxing too often. So wherever we can, we want to know what we're promoting, what we're pushing, what we're building for 4, 5, 6 months ahead of time. So we always work with our promotional partners to do that. This announcement is an example of where we get it right. We can communicate pretty much the full first half of the year schedule in one go, and we always aim for that where we can.
Now, with that schedule also, we learnt that there was a price increase on the flexible pass from £7.99 per month to £19.99 per month. So with that schedule being announced, does the quality of that schedule justify that price increase in your opinion?
Well, I think there's different ways to look at the pricing. For the majority of your audience are hardcore boxing fans, right? They are consuming IFL, they're consuming boxing Twitter. The DAZN subscriber base, although we're not just a boxing service, it's important to remember that, thus far in the UK have largely been hardcore boxing fans for obvious reasons. We want to serve those fans and price ourselves in a way that justifies and fosters loyalty between that base of customers and DAZN. So that's why we rolled out the annual $99.99 pass and the other sort of annual monthly contract pass. There's clearly also, particularly as we get into bigger fights and pay-per-view level fights, like AJ Franklin, pay-per-view level fights with pay-per-view level athletes, there's going to be an audience of people, audience of customers who want to come in and have a shorter term, more flexible relationship with DAZN. We want to serve those customers too. Clearly, we're going to prioritise and optimise our pricing to reward the people that show more loyalty and show more commitment to a longer term DAZN subscription. I'm pretty confident that the majority of our current subscribers in the UK will move on to those longer term commitments because they are hardcore boxing fans. That is part of the reason we wanted to announce the 5-month schedule that we have done this week. We want to work consistently to do that because we're already getting questions of, okay, great value for the first half of the year. How can I know what's happening in the second half of the year, which is a great actually thing for me to show Eddie and other promoters to say we want to get ahead of time and communicate a schedule in advance. So we'll do that. You'll start seeing us announce events ahead of time because we want to show the value in the DAZN subscription. I have to say, after 5-6 years of being in boxing, firstly in the US, now also in the UK and globally, I don't think there's many people, even our most like heavy critics, who would say that DAZN haven't offered value for sports fans. We've invested heavily in boxing. Our boxing business has taken a lot of investment. It's now in a very healthy place, and we want to keep growing it. This pricing strategy is part of that, and it will make our business sustainable and something that we can continue investing in to the benefit of boxing fans.
I see what you're saying there. So outside of the flexible pass, the two other payment plans clearly trying to reward DAZN customers. What I will say though, there is obviously a lot of competition in the UK with Sky, BT, and you guys at DAZN. They don't know what's going to come up after May 20th, so they're committing to 8 or 9 months of payments without knowing the product being put on DAZN. And we know boxing is a volatile business. People get injured, fights fall through for various reasons. So do you think a lot of people are going to go for those other two payment options, considering what I've just said?
I do think that, and the early indications are on the data that I look at that they will. I also think there has to be an element of trust between the consumer and DAZN and Matchroom. 5 years, 6 years in this business, we have consistently delivered in markets all around the world, notably the US and the UK, very high quality scheduling. We work with, and there's some fantastic promoters in the UK. I personally think Eddie's record over the last 5 or 6 years, last 10 years, is better than anyone's. Eddie's roster of fighters is fantastic. His ability to matchmake is fantastic. And we're building with DAZN relationships with the rest of the boxing sort of promotional community, meaning that we can make more fights happen more easily. So I think there needs to be a trust from the consumer in Eddie Hearn, Matchroom and DAZN to continue doing what we have been doing, which is working 24/7 to build the best possible boxing schedule. There's been no feedback or negativity about the first 5 months schedule we've announced. We've announced notably, obviously, AJ Franklin, Taylor Serrano 2, which was fight of the year last year, a rematch of that fight. It's more of that. That's what's going to come. That's what we're going to push towards. And I think if that's the case, which I'm very confident it will be, that the value of these subscriptions is unquestionable.
These high-level names, i.e. Anthony Joshua, Canelo Alvarez, Conor Benn, pending what happens with his investigation, these guys, I think we perhaps expect to be on pay-per-view because you've got that pay-per-view platform. So is the game plan moving forward going to be £19.99, these top-level athletes will be included in your subscription, or depending on the fight for Joshua, Canelo, Ben, etc., you might have to pay additional pay-per-view fee?
I think when we launched pay-per-view, I think we had the conversation with you and or Coogan, we committed to not using pay-per-view every month, like some broadcasters do, particularly in the US. We're not going to do that. We're going to use it sparingly where we need to, where it makes sense, particularly where it makes sense for us to make fights happen. I think the AJ announcement is proof that we're not going to use it just where we can use it. We're going to use it as part of a broader strategy. We look at a schedule and a block of events. I'm not saying we're not going to use pay-per-view. We will use pay-per-view. Eubank Ben would have been a pay-per-view if it had happened. We're just not going to use it every 2 weeks. We're going to use it where it makes sense to use it. So we'll see what comes up. We're looking at a number of big fight proposals. Some of those will be pay-per-view. Some of those will be subscriptions. The point being that we're going to deliver the best possible schedule that's available, and we'll use pay-per-view technology and pricing where it makes sense to.
Joe, how would you say your boxing offering compares to your main competitors in Sky and BT? Of course, the difference with Sky and BT, they have Premier League rights, Champions League rights, so they're a multi-sport channel. But in terms of the boxing offering across the three broadcasters, how would you say you fare?
Well, we're a multi-sport broadcaster too, and we're getting there. We've announced a 10-year deal with the NFL, the world's biggest rights holder, this week, and that will start in the UK as well as around the world this August. So we're not just a boxing service. Look, I look at what Sky are doing and what BT are doing, and I think it's fantastic for boxing fans, first of all. Yeah, there's a lot more investment in boxing content and rights and fights than there were 10 or 12 years ago. That's great for fighters. It's great for fight fans because it means big fights happen. I'm not going to sit here and criticise anyone else. I think we're doing good work. I think BT and Queensbury are doing great work. I think Sky and Boxer are doing great work, and each have delivered huge fights in the last 12 months. My job and the job of my team is to continue doing that on DAZN. We do it globally. Our purview is global. We've got access to a fantastic roster of US fighters, notably Canelo Alvarez, but that doesn't distract from our focus in the UK too. So our focus for the rest of 2023 is building the best possible UK-focused fight schedule with Matchroom, adding to that and sprinkling in the world's biggest fights, notably out of the US. And obviously, you won't necessarily like this, building our X-Series Misfits brand too, separately. And I think all of those things combined, working with BT, working with Sky, working with ESPN and Showtime, the Garcia tank, for example, working with Queensbury when we want to, when we need to. I think it's great. The community is strong. The investment is strong from some of the world's biggest media companies, ourselves included. And as well as that, adding more and more content to the DAZN subscription to make the value that fans take from that, fans of all different types, boxing and otherwise, as strong as possible.
In terms of April 1st, a lot of fight fans over the last God knows how many years are used to watching Anthony Joshua in bars and pubs on a Saturday night. Obviously, we haven't seen that in the UK yet from DAZN at present. Could that be an option for April 1st? Is that something that you're working on?
Yeah, it's definitely potentially an option. We're working on it. We know it's a priority. We want to serve pubs and clubs and bars and restaurants with this content. It's behind the scenes. We're working on it, and I hope we can have something sorted for April 1st.
Just a quick one there. You did mention Tank and Garcia. Seen various reports online that it looks like it potentially could be collapsing for April 15th due to certain issues around the rematch and broadcaster issues. Can you make any comment at this time, please, Joe?
No, there's contracts being worked on. I'm confident it gets done. There was a deal in principle made at the end of last year. The contracts need to reflect that, and when they do, there'll be an announcement.
Joe, thank you very much for your time. Safe travels back to New York, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Good to see you.
I'm going to share something with you that might put me in a very negative light, yeah.
Relationships are not my forte.
See if someone grabbed up my wife or something completely different ballgame.
I'll walk away from it, and this has been like a therapy session.